take two relatively harmless compounds, say nitro and glycerine, combine them together and you have a potent cocktail. I like that analogy. Nitro and glycerine, and I like the fuse. Oh dear me, I didn't see that. I'm so terribly sorry. The Chevrolet Cruze, based on a Vauxhall Astra with an American badge, but built in Korea. Confusing? Any good? Should you care? Why, let's find out, shall we? Chevrolet! Hit it. Oh dear. Mr. Franks, we've got a problem. It's a diesel. Yes, sir. Right. Okay, well, we better review it anyway. Right. Okay. Chevrolet. Hit it.
Wipe away the tears from time to time, we wouldn't lie, but there's a promise for our broken lives, and dawn breaks on our horizons, and we will not be disappointed when we get out of this place, so I'm not disappointed now.
So welcome to yet another Tweed Jacket review. This time we're in Farnborough driving a 2014 Chevrolet Cruze 1.7 VCDI LT diesel. Oh dear. Oh well, I've only got myself to blame. After all, I owned this car from 2015 to 2017, so what do I know? I'd like to thank my friends Alan and Sarah who bought the car off me a couple of years ago, letting us film their pride and joy today. Thanks, Alan and Sarah. Fallon and Sarah. So what can I tell you about the Chevy Cruze? It was originally launched in late 2008, first of all in South Korea, where this one was made, and also then in other markets. Now, this was what was called a global car, so it was made in a lot of different places, including China. But I'm going to focus, for the sake of brevity, not that my reviews are short, but for the sake of brevity, I will just talk about the UK market models. So, for the UK market, the Chevy Cruze was first launched in saloon guise in 2009, and in hatchback guise like this car in 2011. There was also an estate model, which only came in for the facelift in 2012. This is a facelift car, although I did own a pre-facelift hatchback model before this one. This particular car has a 1.7 turbo diesel engine, originally developed by Isuzu in the 1990s, but was fitted to lots and lots of Opel and Vauxhall cars right up until about 2015, when the Euro 6 emissions came in. Now, it's a very economical engine. You get mid-50s MPG in this, but it's not very quiet. It's very noisy, particularly when you start, and we can feel, when we're filming today, a lot of vibration coming into the cabin. Other engines available in the Chevrolet Cruze for the UK market were a 1.6 litre petrol, which was actually a modified old Daewoo engine, although originally before that it was a General Motors Family 1 engine. So you find a modified version of that in the Astra as well. That developed first 113 horsepower and later 122 horsepower, like in the car that I had. A 1.8 litre version of the same unit that developed 140 horsepower, although with the same economy and emissions as a 1.6. And there was also a 2 litre diesel, which I have to talk about now because we are on a diesel, that was very powerful, 163 horsepower. And that absolutely shifted. This one's got 130 horsepower and does 0 to 60 in just under 10 seconds. The previous Chevrolet Cruze I had to this one was a 2011 1.6 litre petrol. That did maybe 35 to 40 miles per gallon if you were driving it gently. and it only had a 5-speed gearbox, which is not good for economy. This has a 6-speed gearbox, and so if you're cruising along the motorway at 70 miles an hour and you slip it into 6th gear, the car will probably pull about 2,000 RPM, and you'll be getting 60, 70 miles per gallon on a journey like that, which is really, really good. And the slug of torque you get from this engine, it means you hardly even have to change gear a lot of the time. It's really, really kind of smooth in that way, although the ride is very, very jiggly in this car. I'd forgotten how bad it was, actually. The steering, it's heavier than I remember it, but then again, I've got electric power steering like this in my Seat Toledo, and that is very light. This isn't quite as light, but the steering feels a little bit remote. There's not a lot of feel. The handling's perfectly fine. There's a bit of body roll, but because of the firm suspension, it's kept reasonably well in check. It's not a sports car, this, but for most of the people who would have bought this kind of car as maybe like a company car or a family car, it's absolutely fine to drive. So this particular example has done 80,000 miles in 5 years, and that's an exceptionally high mileage for a car like this. Alan and Sarah and I used to drive it a lot when I owned it. I bought it in November 2015 when it was about 18 months old, and it had 25,000 on the clock, so it's done an awful lot of miles. The suspension feels a little bit worn to me, but the gearbox and the clutch, that feels good, and overall the build quality is actually fine. The trim levels available in the UK market, Chevrolet Cruze, were LS, which didn't even come with alloy wheels or any steering wheel buttons. LT, which is one of these, and which also my previous Chevrolet Cruze was, an LTZ. There was also an LTZ nav, which came with standard sat-nav, although I think that was renamed just to LTZ with the 2012 facelift. So all Chevrolet Cruzes standard got an aux input for stereo. The LT came with parking sensors. You got sat-nav on the LTZ and LTZ nav, and Bluetooth, and all of them have a 5-star Euro NCAP crash test rating, which is very, very reassuring, and the car feels quite solid. If anything, it feels a little bit too heavy, and these doors can be quite a liability if you're opening them, say, up a hill. In terms of rivals to this car, there was the Ford Focus, the Hyundai i30, the Kia Ceed, and even the Vauxhall Astra, which this is actually based on, and it was cheaper than all of those. A lot of Cruzes came with a 5-year warranty as well, along with 5 years free servicing and 5 years breakdown cover. I think at the time that would have been an absolutely brilliant value package, and I can see why somebody would have bought this when it was new in 2014. So what are the things I miss most about this car, having not owned it for 2 years? One of the things is the driving position. It's absolutely excellent. I'll talk more about it in a bit, but it's very comfortable. Secondly, I miss this torque of this engine. I know I don't talk about diesels very much, but the extra torque you get from this engine, I really miss that. You know, just driving petrols most of the time now. Also, the tank range is incredible. It's probably about 700 miles, and you can see why somebody would really like this as a company car. One of the things that this car reminds me of is the days when diesel was everybody's friend. And so, because this is a 2014 model and it came in before the tax changes in 2017, it's £30 a year to tax. I really miss that. The running costs of all these cars are not that high, because if you go to any Vauxhall dealer or just Halfords or something like that, you can find most of the parts because they're based on an Astra. And so, although Chevrolet's pulled out of Europe now and pulled out in 2015, they're very cheap cars to buy and run, and they're generally pretty reliable. There are a couple of issues though with this car that I noticed are common to both that I owned. One of them is the door mirrors. The plastic around them, which is supposed to be black, turns white and goes a bit sort of scabby, I don't know why that is, it's really strange. Secondly, the drive shaft oil seals in the front, they actually start leaking, even when the car's less than 3 years old, and this one I got done under warranty. But that's just something to be aware of when you buy one of these cars. Just make sure you check the drive shaft oil seals.
Here we are and we're together, even if we are apart, and we're together when we're together. Something big is happening among us. It's not as if
Well, I really enjoyed that. It gave me a fabulous nostalgic glow, just like finding a favourite old jumper. Anyway, enough about that. Let's look at the practical side of this car, and let's start, as always, in the boot. Oh, shut up! So back in 2011, when this car was launched, at 413 litres, this was one of the biggest boots in the class. Very practical shape, nice and square, few of these hooks in it, but the best thing about this boot is this underfloor area. Unfortunately, if you wanted a spare wheel, you had to pay £250 for it. £250! So instead we get the famous tyre repair kit, which to be honest is rubbish. So we'll get in the back and I'll show you something else that's a bit annoying about this car. You'll see that if I just move across here, I fold the seat down, these headrests really get in the way, and there's no clip to actually stop the seatbelt getting snagged, which is a real problem. If I just move across again here, you will however see that I am 5'11", and this is roughly the position I'd be sitting in. I've got plenty of knee room, and headroom's just about okay too. So we've got this armrest in here and these cup holders. Now there's no ski hatch, but that wasn't very common on cars like this anyway. We've got a 12-volt socket down here, which is nice. One thing I would say about this cabin, particularly in the rear, it is very, very dark. That's a problem that's common to the Astra actually as well. Particularly these black doors, which seem to sort of take over the entire ambience of the back of the car. And they're hard plastic as well, which isn't great. But that's something you could level at probably a lot of cars like this. Enough about my moaning of dark interiors and plastic door tops. Let's pull this rather nice chrome handle and move round to the front. Oh, be quiet. Dear me, this buzzer is so annoying. Anyway, it's very nice in the front of here actually. Some reviewers have commented that why is there fabric on the dashboard, but I really like it. Granted, you don't get a nice soft touch dashboard, but in most cars of this era, that was pretty common. The steering wheel is absolutely lovely. It's the same that they use on the Chevrolet Corvette actually, and the buttons all feel really nice. It's actually a much nicer interior than most cars of this era were, with the exception of probably a Volkswagen Golf or an Audi A3. All the controls are very logically laid out. The mirror switches, the door switches, the heater controls, the stereo controls are exactly where you want them to be. Now granted, this is a car that was designed in the late 2000s, so there's lots and lots of buttons for the stereo that you just wouldn't find on a modern car, and there is no touchscreen, not even on the top spec model. So if I turn the ignition on, one thing that's really nice about this car is that when you start the engine, the speedometer and rev counter swirl round to the right and then to the left, which looks really sporty. That's a nice touch about it, and it's backlit in blue, which I think is probably the best colour for instrument lighting. It's very easy to see the dials. The steering wheel also adjusts for height and adjusts for reach. And the driving position in this car is superb. The seat has a huge amount of adjustment up and down as well. So this being the LT model, which is the mid-range trim, one of the problems with not upgrading to the LTZ is this tiny little screen in the middle, which basically reminds you every time you get in the car and look at the radio station that you didn't pay extra for sat nav. Naughty. So in comparison with the Astra, the dashboard's actually better laid out in this car, and there's more practicality, such as this lidded thing on the top, and there's loads of different places to put things. I mean, let's look at the glove box. That's big enough for all the secret mission documents you could ever need. And there's some cup holders here. Oh, and look, a cigarette lighter. When did you last see one of those? This being the LT, you get cruise control. You also get a button to the stereo on the steering wheel. They feel really nice, unlike the one in my lady wife's MG3. You get an aux input, which is right in this storage bin, which is very annoying. You also get this removable ashtray. You get air conditioning, not climate control, unless you go for the LTZ, of course. And that's about most of it. One thing I don't like about this car is that there's no Bluetooth unless you go for the LTZ. And this is one of the reasons actually I changed to my current car for the lack of Bluetooth. I had to wear a stupid headset and look like somebody out of a 1950s science fiction film. So let's talk a bit about visibility. This car is terrible. This A-pillar is really thick, the rear window is really small, and it's a real pain to reverse. You'll notice probably that we've got scuffs and marks all over this car because now Alan, who's Sarah's husband, and Sarah and I basically use this a bit like a Dodgem when we used to drive it. And you absolutely need the parking sensors that we've got on this car. You really need them, otherwise you just can't see anything. It's like trying to reverse a boat on a foggy river. So, what do I think of the Chevy Cruze? Well, it's cracking value for money. I mean, if you were to buy an Astra like this specification and age and mileage, it'd probably be about 25% more. But because Chevrolet have now disappeared from the UK, this is a real bargain. I think it looks better than the Astra, there's more space in it, and I think for, say, £3,000, which is what one of these is worth, or slightly less, you're getting an amazing car. Oh, dear me, I do apologise. This old town is getting gloomy, feel the cold winds blowing through me every day. Thank you for watching this episode of Tweed Jacket Reviews. My name is Joseph Lloyd, I'm an independent vehicle consultant. I find cars for people. Please subscribe to the channel if you'd like to do that. Don't forget to like this video and to leave a comment below. If you wish me to source a car for you, I'd love to do that. My website is www.lloydvehicleconsulting.co.uk. Please use the Contact Me page on my website to get in touch. I've got a Facebook page as well. It's facebook.com/Lloyd Vehicle Consulting. Thank you.